So, I've been asked to talk about generosity, my journey of growing and giving. It's certainly not an exciting story, but it does show growth. When I was a kid, we belonged to the Lutheran church across town. My dad was the superintendent of the Sunday school for a while, and we attended church regularly. Back then, parents didn't talk much about their finances with their kids, at least not in my family. But they did make it clear that we were to give to the church. We never knew how much my parents gave, but they did tell us about tithing and the goal to give 10%. I went through confirmation classes, and I'm sure I learned more about tithing there. Not that I remember a whole lot. But my story isn't so much about tithing as it is about generosity. Growing up in our house, we pretty much had everything we needed, if not always what we wanted. We always had plenty to eat and a new pair of shoes at the beginning of each school year. Christmas and birthday gifts as we got older were usually clothes we needed and 2 or 3 things for fun, like books or games. If you had asked me about generosity in high school, I wouldn't have had a lot to say about it. I knew we didn't have a lot of money, and other than giving at church, I didn't really see generosity. For example, if we asked to borrow the car, the answer was usually no because Mom might need it. I didn't think that was very generous, but as an adult it makes more sense. Of course, as a kid, I wouldn't have considered my dad's time volunteering for the Sunday school as generosity like I understand it now. So although I was brought up learning about giving to the church, I had a very shallow understanding of generosity. Later, as a young adult on my own, I was fairly self-centered, didn't attend church all that regularly, and gave to United Way from my paycheck because it was easy and I didn't have to think about it much. Ernie Banks once came to my workplace to speak about United Way giving, and that was really cool. I got a signed baseball cap. I might even have increased my United Way giving, but I can't really remember. It wasn't until I married Billy and became part of his family that I really learned about generosity. When we married, we sold my house and kept his. We needed to remodel the bathroom and the kitchen, and his stepdad, Bill, would come over and work with him to get it done. There was never any question about hiring out projects if you could do it yourself. Then Sean was born, and we bought our current house, and Grandpa Bill just assumed he was needed and came over to do whatever needed doing. I had never seen anything like it. My family wasn't handy. Except for painting and lawn care, we hired people to do maintenance and upgrades. You know how there's always something that needs to be done with a house? Well, Bill would just be there, and he and Billy always knew what to work on next. He was so hardworking, and I got a kick out of watching him and Billy work together. He would tell Billy to hand him a tool or hold something in place, and he'd swear when things didn't go as planned. Once the kids got older, they'd get included in some of the projects. I do remember fairly early on having a talk with Grandpa about his language around the kids. He didn't take it personally, and he cleaned it up quite nicely. Being around Grandpa Bill was an eye-opening experience for me. I had never really considered how giving your time could be the very definition of generosity. Because of him, it was easy to teach our kids that you help out family and friends and neighbors because you can. Bill passed away in 2013, and I still actively miss him, and thank God for having him as part of my family and my life. So although I feel I learned the most about generosity from Bill, Billy and I had different ideas about giving to the church in the beginning. It's funny because his family taught us about giving your time and skills, but the part about giving money to the church was learned more from my family. So each year when it's time to fill out our pledge cards, we dicker about it a little bit, and then we come to a figure we can agree on. We try to increase the pledge every year, and then we make sure we always meet or exceed our pledge in actual giving. After serving as the St. Barnabas treasurer for about 7 years, I gained some insight into what it costs to keep the building open and running and staffed. We were operating at almost a bare minimum for some of those years. And that experience changed my perception quite a bit. To actually reach out to the community and offer our service, we need to collect more than the bare minimum. God gives us so much, even when we don't deserve it. To give with that same spirit, we need to be generous. My view of generosity has changed over time. It includes giving of money and time and talents. I believe each of us has a different mix of money, time, and talents that we can give, and that mix may change as we go through different stages of life. So that's my journey of understanding generosity, but I have one final thought. When I start feeling like I control everything in my life, it's harder to give. The more I trust in the Lord, the easier it is to be generous. Thank you for listening.